Australia's anti-encryption bill passes, banks get hit with old-school social engineering and new-school tech, and Huawei gets banned in multiple countries. All that coming up now on ThreatWire. Greetings, I am Shannon Morris, and this is ThreatWire for December 11th, 2018, your summary of the threats to our security, privacy, and internet freedom. This week, I would like to give a special shout out to all of our new Patreon supporters. Hello, everyone, because you helped this show get to my goal to cover the costs associated with the big upgrades that we did to the studio this year, and to start doing a live video Q&A just for all of the patrons. So since we hit that goal by the end of this month, that was the plan, then that Q&A will start up this month, and because of the overwhelming support that I saw for that surprise gift that I did, I'm going to do another physical reward next year as well. So thank you, I hope you enjoy it, and y'all are amazing. You keep the show going, and now it's ready. It is time for some news. Let's talk about Australia, shall we? Last week, the Parliament of Australia passed the Telecommunications and Other Legislation Amendment, the Assistance and Access Bill 2018, which notably has been nicknamed the Anti-Encryption Bill. Why? Well, this new bill gives authority to law enforcement to force Google, Facebook, and many other tech companies to hand over or help them access encrypted communications. Now, this is not the first time encryption has been a government target. Every single time something terrible happens in the US, one of the key components for authorities is allowing them a backdoor into phone encryption. This is the first bill, though, which has passed in the world that allows something similar to be legal. Australia's government argues the same, that this will help defend against trafficking of persons or drugs, terrorist attacks, and crime. So both major parties, the Coalition and Labour, supported it. Parliament will be in session again in 2019, at which time the upper house is expected to make this bill into law. Now, oddly, the Labour Party had proposed 173 amendments, but they dropped all of them in order for the bill to be passed this year. Now, I will reiterate, this bill is not allowing for systemic backdoors or weaknesses in encryption, but it allows lawful access to information that could be obtained by either decrypting of encrypted technologies or accessing of communications and data at points where they aren't encrypted. What? So this means that Australia's law enforcement wants to see your data before it gets encrypted locally or after it's decrypted by the receiver. So this affects end-to-end encryption apps and techniques like Signal, but it also physical device storage and email accounts. Now, the bill covers three major points that involve tech companies and their assistance for accessing encrypted information or data. First is the Technical Assistance Request, or TAR for short. This one requests voluntary assistance from tech companies to law enforcement, not short of, quote, removing electronic protection, providing technical information, installing software, putting information in a particular format, and facilitating access to devices or services. Second is Technical Assistance Notice, or TAN for short. This one requires tech companies to help with anything that they are capable of doing as long as that assistance is reasonable, feasible, and proportionate, which by all means is rather vague. The third is Technical Capability Notice, or TCN for short. Now, this one is issued by the Attorney General, and it requires tech companies to build new capabilities or workarounds to allow for decrypting data for law enforcement. And if companies just say no, they could receive huge financial penalties from Australia to the sound of 10 million Australian dollars. Employees or app devs could be fined 50,000 Australian dollars as well. Now, judicial warrants are still required to intercept encrypted messages, and while Australia's government says that this is not a backdoor, that last point, the third step, requiring a tech company to build new capabilities for decryption, that sure does sound like a backdoor to me. Now, the bill does not ask for systemic weaknesses in encryption, which would be a true backdoor, but it does ask for technology that could be used or exploited if third parties got a hold of it if it got leaked. The bill contains a clause defining systemic weaknesses, and that's one of the very few clauses that allows tech companies to refuse to assist government. Now, while you may think that this is not a big deal and it's for a greater good, I mean, hey, we all want to catch criminals, right? I definitely do. A much larger problem surfaces. What happens when a criminal gets a hold of the technology that allows for decryption? If we've learned anything from the NSA, you've heard all the stories here on ThreatWire, it's that eventually technology that is only to be used by the government, it ends up leaking. It breaks the fundamental reasons behind encryption, and it could cause much larger repercussions for the entire world as we know it. Cybersecurity firm Kaspersky Lab investigated suspicious activity at Eastern European banks and found what they believed to be proof of multiple hacks by cybercriminals, which allowed thieves to steal tens of millions of dollars from at least 8 different banks. Kaspersky explained that they usually find suspicious activity in the form of malware or phishing attacks via email, but in this case, they found physical devices installed on a corporate network. In total, they found 3 different types of devices at the offices of the banks that they were hired to investigate. And what devices did they find? Well, they found laptops, Raspberry Pi boards, and Bash Bunnies. And I should add a disclaimer here. Bash Bunnies are Hack5 created devices that allow for USB plug-and-play advanced attacks for penetration testers on a fast hardware platform. Now, Kaspersky called the attack, and I might get this completely incorrect, Dark Vishnya, and it appears to involve an attacker dropping a device on the network, then snooping on the network from a remote location. The laptop would be used with a 3G modem and a remote control program. The Raspberry Pi would be easier to hide in an office and can be hidden behind a lobby or a waiting area TV, also connected to the network. And lastly, the Bash Bunnies were used due to their unobtrusive look. They look like thumb drives, and because they don't require a dedicated network connection as well. Now, each device would be connected to a bank network or a computer and remotely accessed via 3G, LTE, or GPRS. The attackers use that connection to scan for public shared folders to pivot to other open computers. Eventually, malware was left on the network to steal the money from all sorts of bank accounts. Now, attackers did run into firewall restrictions, but they were able to bypass those with their own shellcode with local TCP servers alongside separate payloads to build tunnels within reverse connections. Their use of PowerShell and fileless attacks allowed them to avoid domain policies or whitelisting issues, while in-packet and localized programs were used to run executable files remotely. Attacks occurred from 2017 all the way up through 2018, but information is kind of vague there. We don't even know which banks this was involving. Kaspersky recommends companies disconnect unused Ethernet outlets in public areas or isolate them on separate networks, make sure that Ethernet sockets can be seen by security cameras within the area, use a security solution software with device control, and consider using monitoring software so that you are alerted of suspicious activity on the network. Lastly, for today, I wanted to briefly touch upon the whole Huawei drama. So last week, Huawei's CFO and Deputy Chair Wang Xiaoming was arrested in Canada on the behalf of the US government for allegedly violating the US sanctions with Iran. Meng is now facing extradition to the United States and has a bail hearing that was set for Friday. According to a source on Canadian law enforcement, this was due to Meng evading an embargo against Iran made by the US. She is accused of fraud and tricking financial institutions into making transactions with Iran, which would go against those sanctions. Now, Huawei claims to be unaware of any wrongdoings by Meng, while the Chinese embassy of Ottawa protested the arrest and demanded her release. Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau denies involvement in the arrest. So why does this matter to us? Well, Huawei is the second largest phone manufacturer behind Samsung, and due to the US government's mistrust of the Chinese company, they have not had a foothold in America. And due to the tariffs that have been imposed, both countries have been in a very shaky relationship, even without cybersecurity problems. We are seeing similar shaky relationships in Japan as well. Japan reportedly will not be purchasing telecommunications products from ZTE or Huawei over fears of cyber attacks or spying. The US also banned government purchases of Huawei gear due to the same concerns. And Australia and New Zealand also decided to block the company from building any 5G networks. And British Telecom, or BT, is removing any Huawei technology from their EE mobile network. BT does have a 5G partnership with Huawei though, through their 5G new radio and customer premises equipment. So Huawei is not having one of the greatest of years due to that suspicion of their activities, cybersecurity, spying, all those things. So the unfortunate part though is that no publicly facing information is available that would indict them of any suspicions. Huawei does deny claims of any wrongdoing and no proof has been procured of any kind of illegal activities. So, is Huawei at fault? We really don't know, but I'd love to hear your comments below. I would like to say thank you to everyone for helping us reach that goal on Patreon to do that monthly live Q&A just for all patrons. And of course, if you are interested in getting access to that along with a slew of other extras, I'm posting like almost every single day, even if it's just $1 or $2 a month, hit that button to become a Patreon supporter because it all helps and it shows me that you appreciate the work that I'm putting in for this show, and it helps us make the show even bigger and better for you. Also, a big thanks to our Hush Puppy Perk level patrons for sending in their fur baby photos. They are quite adorable, especially in the winter months. They look so cuddly. I love them. Keep them coming. Hit that subscribe button or share this episode on your favorite social media page as well. Let's get some newcomers up in here. And with that, I'm Shannon Morse, and I will see you on the internet.